And welcome to the 2023 Louisiana Gubernatorial Debate pre-show exclusively on WWL Digital. I'm Aaron S. Lee, and we are just over a month out from Election Day on October 14th. And tonight, just minutes away on WWL-TV and all WWL digital and streaming platforms, marks the first opportunity for candidates to go head-to-head as they try to convince Louisiana voters why they should be our next governor. Joining me is WWL-TV political analyst Clancy DuBos. Clancy, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Clancy, let's jump right in. Listen, what are you most looking forward to from tonight's debate?
I'm waiting to see which, if any, of the Republicans who are in single digits in all the polls can distinguish himself or herself from the others and go after frontrunner Jeff Landry, also a Republican. Right now, you look back over the last 4 or 5 months, all the polls suggest it's two frontrunners, Republican Jeff Landry, the Attorney General for the last 8 years, and Democrat Shawn Wilson, former Transportation Secretary. They have been locked in first and second. Landry significantly ahead, but Wilson solidly in second place. Everybody else in single digits, and everybody else is basically the other Republican want to be governors. They need to go to the whip, and tonight is their first chance. They need to find a way, each of them needs to find a way to say, I'm the one who will slay the dragon. I'm the one who can take on Jeff Landry. If they can't do that, then it's going to continue to be a two-horse front runner with the field trailing them in single digits.
You know, you mentioned the 5 candidates that are going to be here tonight. Listen, the one name missing is Jeff Landry, the Republican, the state attorney general. Your thoughts on the reason that he decided not to attend?
Well, the reason he decided not to attend, in my opinion, is not the reason that he gave or that the Republican Party gave. He's not showing up tonight because he's basically scared. When you're way in front, you want to kind of sit on your lead, which I think is what he's doing. He's continuing to put out all of his feel-good ads and say, oh, I'm just an everyman, just like you. I love Louisiana, and keeping the waters calm. His opponents, in his absence, are going to go after him, and they need to go after him big time to eat away at his huge lead among Louisiana's vast pool of conservative voters. If they fail to do that, then they might as well fold their tents right now. But I think they're going to go after him tonight in a big way.
So you believe they'll mention his name quite a bit tonight?
Oh, sure. They might even say, why don't we have an empty chair here? That's which happens sometimes in debates. But they'll show an empty chair with the candidate's name as a no-show. And Landry's starting to get attacked for not showing up. Frankly, in my opinion, it's an act of cowardice. If you really are prepared to lead the state of Louisiana through all of the crises that every governor faces, look back at John Bel Edwards' 2 terms. Started off early on with floods, mass shooting in which police were shot, hurricanes, now wildfires, tornadoes, economic downturns, a pandemic. Governors have to face whatever comes. They don't get to pick and choose which crises they want to address. So when a candidate says, I'm going to pick and choose which debates I attend, that's a sign that something's wrong there. It's a big red flag because I believe, and I've seen in 50 years of covering Louisiana politics, that candidates campaign the way they govern. So Jeff Landry is showing how he's going to govern. He's going to want to pick and choose which issues he takes on. Governors don't get that luxury. Attorney generals do, but not governors.
You mentioned some of the crises that they'll have to cover. What are some things that candidates typically want to avoid? Some of the pitfalls that they do not want to get lured into in tonight's debate?
Well, it's an old saying in politics that nobody wins or loses a debate by outpointing his or her opponent. Candidates lose debates by making unforced errors. So Landry, who's frankly not the sharpest tool in the shed among this field of candidates, you've got some very smart folks running, and he's not the smartest in my opinion, but I think he's listening to his advisors who are saying, look, you don't need to do this. You don't want to risk any unforced errors. Avoid this debate. Pick and choose the debate you want. He's going to debate next Friday on a Friday night when people are thinking high school football, the run up to LSU and Saints football. So a Friday night is not when people tend to sit around and watch TV. especially not a debate among candidates. This is a time when they want to go out to dinner, go be with their friends, go to a high school football game, do anything but watch a debate. So that's why he's going to that debate. It's also hosted by a conservative network, so he feels more comfortable there. I don't think he wants to face the tough questions that the other candidates are going to get tonight.
Clancy, we had an exclusive new statewide poll conducted by WWL late last month. Landry showed to be the clear frontrunner, as you mentioned, capturing 36% of the vote. Respondents followed by Sean Wilson at 26%. What does Sean Wilson need to do to close that gap tonight?
I don't know that he needs to close the gap tonight with Landry. I think he needs to solidify his base among Democrat and black voters and moderates. He needs to try to win over the moderates who are not comfortable with Jeff Landry, and there's a lot of those. In fact, there's a significant ABL movement out there in Louisiana, anybody but Landry. The same poll shows that about half of Landry's support is soft. He's got 36%, which is a lot, but almost half of that says, I would consider somebody else. So that's what the other candidates, including Sean Wilson, know are up for grabs. And Wilson wants to reach out to Democrats and unite them behind himself, because you've always played your strengths to your base from at the beginning of a campaign, and then you reach outward. So I think tonight's going to be the beginning of him reaching outward to white crossover voters, white moderates, and uniting African-American voters behind his candidacy.
Of course, Landry and Wilson, the only two in our poll receiving double-digit percentages in our trial heat. The others all single-digit. What do they need to do to maybe gain some ground on the two frontrunners?
Well, they need to cast doubt in voters' minds about what Jeff Landry is all about. They're going to criticize his record as Attorney General. For example, I would expect more than one of them will say, look, he's the state's chief law enforcement officer, and he's talking about how bad crime is. What has he done about it? That's the kind of question they'll raise. I think they'll criticize him for some of the ethics violations or the latest ethics violation that he's accused of, accepting a free flight, which allegedly is a violation of the ethics laws of Louisiana, and the ethics board has filed a charge against him. So he's not here to defend that, but he's going to have to defend it at some point. In the meantime, they get to score points tonight in his absence by criticizing him for that.
Sean Wilson, the secretary, former secretary of the Department of Transportation here in Louisiana, he was endorsed by the Louisiana governor, John Bel Edwards. How much does that endorsement either help or perhaps hurt his chances?
I don't think it hurts him very much. It would hurt him perhaps among Republicans who are not going to follow John Bel Edwards anyway. I think it helps him because it solidifies his base among Democrats. John Bel Edwards, the only Democratic governor in the South, is still liked and still gets positive ratings by 53% of the voters in Louisiana. That includes a fair number of Republicans. So for a governor of either party to finish his or her term with a majority saying he's doing a good job is something that all governors aspire to. He's the envy of outgoing governors around the South, even Republican governors. Contrast that with Bobby Jindal's final approval ratings, which were in the high 20s and low 30s. He was the second least popular governor in America. So that's a disaster, followed by a guy who looks like a clear winner, because frankly, Edwards wasn't trying to use the governor's office as a stepping stone to the presidency or something else, whereas Jindal was constantly trying to, fly off to other states under the pretext of just making a visit when he was clearly trying to launch a campaign for president, which fizzled on day one. But Edwards said and acted like he was here for Louisiana. He didn't have other aspirations. He wasn't using the office as a stepping stone, and he did well. Nobody ever accused him of chickening out of anything or of having ethics violations. So he's got high marks. So I think it definitely helps Sean Wilson solidify his Democratic base, and he needed that endorsement right out of the gate, and he got it.
I want to go back to our poll. Respondents made it quite clear that crime, violent crime that is, education, insurance rates, and economic growth were the biggest concerns. How can we expect the candidates to address those issues tonight?
Well, they've all been saying, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to bring down insurance rates. I'm going to fight crime. I've got a plan. They need to get specific. They need to show not only what their plan is, but why that plan will work. And each one needs to show why he or she is the one who can actually get it done.
Well, you know, we talk about crime being the biggest concern. 51% of the 800 voters polled said that we need to get tougher on crime and put criminals behind bars longer. 41% believe longer sentences are not the solution. Where do these candidates stand?
Well, you know, those poll results are a little bit contradictory to one another. Everybody wants to get tough on crime, but they also feel, citizens are now convinced, that just locking them up and throwing away the key, which Louisiana has done for over a century, is not the answer, because we are the most incarcerated state in the country and one of the most incarceral places in the world, and yet our crime rate keeps going up. So voters get that just locking them up doesn't bring down crime. They don't want violent criminals to walk. They want violent people who are out to hurt others behind bars. But locking everybody up, they say, and they agree, is not the answer. So candidates have to put forth, I think, a specific plan. I think they need to address what is it about the criminal justice reforms that were enacted in Louisiana several years ago and which are still rolling out and still beginning to have whatever impact they're going to have. What's working about that, what's not working, and what specific changes they will make, and why those proposals will work, in their opinion. And you have to convince voters that their ideas are not only good ideas, but that they can implement them and they can make them happen.
You know, Clancy, speaking of violent crime and staying on that topic, of those polled, 51% are against Governor John Bel Edwards' clemency proposal for death row inmates. 41% of those favoring abolishing capital punishment. Can we expect to hear from the candidates about this tonight?
Oh, I suspect they've seen those numbers, and their own polls are showing something very similar. So I would look for all the candidates to have, perhaps not Sean Wilson, but maybe so. But I think certainly all the Republican candidates will say, I'm for the death penalty. I know this is what Louisiana voters want, and I'm not going to follow Governor Edwards' plan on that.
You know, Louisiana's abortion law is also a polarizing topic. 50% saying we need to change the recent law to expand the right to abortion. 42% saying to keep it as is. From your knowledge, where do the candidates stand?
Well, all of the candidates are going to take some form of a pro-life stance, although Sean Wilson is more pro-choice. He's not been very, very specific about that, so he needs to be more specific, and I think there will be some questions tonight. I'll look for questions to be put to these candidates. Exactly what is your position on abortion? Specifically, do you favor keeping the laws as we have them right now? Do you think we should allow, for example, exceptions for rape and incest or for the life of the mother? Do we want to let doctors make that call, or do we want lawyers and politicians to make that call? That's the kind of specificity that voters want to hear, they want to know, and it's important to the voters, so it's important to the candidates to be specific about exactly where they stand on Louisiana's anti-abortion laws.
So from your opinion, tonight, necessarily you can't win or lose the election from a debate, but can it help make or break you?
Yes, again, it's unforced errors that typically cause candidates to fail. It's not so much that a candidate wins a debate, but candidates can lose a debate by saying something that just makes no sense, by flubbing, by having, like I sometimes have, a senior moment where you start down a trail and then you forget where you're going. You know, that happened once to Bob Livingston in the governor's race, and he was a much younger man than he is today, and it came back to haunt him. He said, there's 3 things we got to do, and then he said the first 2 and couldn't remember the third. And everybody likes Bob Livingston. He's a good guy, but it was a mistake. It was an unforced error, and it hurt him. So that's the kind of unforced error. Someone says something that's just not true, that winds up blowing up, or they say something that's, you know, racially insensitive, or that offends a group of people somehow, or that just, you know, just sounds like gobbledygook, and that will get played over and over and say, we can't have this person as our governor. And I think that's why Jeff Landry's not going to be there tonight. He's the kind of guy who says things that come back to haunt him. So his campaign handlers are saying, no, don't go there. Blame it on the Urban League, which frankly sounds to me like race baiting, because the Urban League is a predominantly black organization. That follows and echoes Donald Trump's statements that I only represent the people who voted for me, which is frankly not what presidents or governors are supposed to do, let alone say. But I think they're worried that Landry will say something that gets him in trouble, so they're keeping him under wraps. And he may just do that one debate, we'll see. But if that's what he does, he's going to get criticized, and I think it will cost him votes.
Clancy, how do you expect Jeff Landry to respond, or does he respond tomorrow to tonight's debate?
Oh, he'll just probably dismiss it and say, well, of course they're attacking me because I'm the front runner. Well, that's true. You always attack the front runner. If you don't do that, the front runner remains the front runner. That's politics, and Landry knows that. He's a very seasoned politician. And let me say this, I've criticized him, but he has run almost a picture-perfect campaign thus far. His ads, while I think they're a little bit disingenuous, they're very good. All political ads are disingenuous. All of these folks are making themselves out to be, superheroes and people who can just show up and I've got the plan, I'm going to make it happen, et cetera, et cetera. It's all exaggeration. But his ads, I think, are the best of the litter right now because they're consistent, they're on message, and his campaign and he are being very disciplined about, staying in the lane and not getting drawn into sideshows.
Clancy, how important is this inaugural debate tonight for the overall election, especially here in New Orleans? New Orleans in this area being typically a blue dot and a sea of red. Just your thoughts on the viability and the importance of tonight.
Well, a first debate is always very important because, as the old saying goes, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And this is going to be the first impression that voters get of all the candidates on the stage. Well, I'm sorry, almost all the candidates on the stage, not Jeff Landry, but all the candidates who are most in need of making a good first impression. This is voters' first chance to see them. And, the voters get to sort of winnow out and what people like me and many others are waiting to see, including some of the big donors around the state, they're waiting to see if somebody can break out of the pack and challenge Jeff Landry. Tonight will be the first step in that process. If it's going to happen at all, it will begin tonight.
Thank you, Clancy. Once again, WWL political analyst Clancy DuBos. Now listen, stay tuned for 2023 Louisiana Gubernatorial Election Debate right here on WWL-TV and on all WWL Digital platforms.